It was a grim discovery for a group of road workers, a red suitcase discarded by the roadside. Curiosity turned to horror when they unzipped it. Inside lay the lifeless body of a young woman. The investigation would later reveal she'd endured an unimaginable and brutal end. Her name was Valerie Eise, and her story began in the small town of New Rochelle, New York. I learned she was a loving older sister to three younger brothers, a tight-knit bunch. Friends described Valerie as a beacon of light, always bright, cheerful, and incredibly sociable, drawing people to her. Her bond with her mother was especially strong. They were more like best friends, sharing everything, with no secrets between them. Valerie was brimming with talent. She had a beautiful singing voice and a knack for drawing. She was budding as a tattoo artist, looking up to her brother, who was already a seasoned pro in the field. They even shared a dream of one day opening their own tattoo parlor together. For the time being, though, Valerie was earning her keep at a local bookstore. It was in January 2018, through a dating site, that 24-year-old Valerie connected with 26-year-old Javier de Silva, an immigrant from Venezuela. Javier had fled his home country in 2017, reportedly fearing for his safety, and hadn't completed his college education. He made his way to New York and found work as a waiter in a restaurant. After a few dates, Valerie and Javier hit it off and began a relationship. But their romance was a whirlwind, lasting only about 3 months. In that short time, Javier was already pushing for them to move in together and talking about marriage. This intensity started to unnerve Valerie. She just wasn't ready for that level of commitment so quickly. Feeling things were moving way too fast, Valerie suggested they go their separate ways. Valerie's family had met Javier a couple of times, and, on the surface, he seemed like a nice, sweet guy. He appeared to treat Valerie well, but there was an undercurrent of persistence. He didn't seem to take no for an answer easily. Javier didn't take the breakup well and desperately tried to win Valerie back. He bombarded her with text messages and would coincidentally bump into her in stores or on the street. Then, one day in September 2018, Javier called Valerie with a strange story. He claimed he'd mistakenly used her bank card for an online purchase and wanted to meet up to repay her. Valerie was immediately suspicious. She felt Javier was manufacturing excuses to see her, continuing his pursuit, and she had no desire to rekindle things with such an overbearing ex. She confided in a friend about Javier's behavior and asked for help dealing with the supposed money issue. This friend met with Javier, had a firm talk with him, and asked him to leave Valerie alone. Surprisingly, Javier seemed to heed her words. He backed off, and Valerie finally started to relax, feeling a sense of calm return. Then, on January 24th, 2019, Javier sent a bizarre text to one of his other ex-girlfriends, claiming he'd caught Valerie in his bed with a neighbor. This was a blatant lie. Valerie wouldn't have been anywhere near his house. They'd broken up and weren't in contact. His motives for sending that text were murky, but it's true that Valerie had, by this point, started seeing someone new. Fast forward to January 27th, 2019. Valerie enjoyed a holiday party with her family, a seemingly happy occasion. But the very next day, January 28th, after her shift at the bookstore, Valerie called her mother, utterly hysterical. She was terrified, screaming that she feared someone was going to kill her. Valerie confessed to her mother that she'd been suffering from severe anxiety attacks. Paranoia had set in. She felt unsafe in her own apartment, haunted by recent news stories of women being murdered in their homes. Valerie was gripped by the fear that she could be next. Her mother pressed her, asking who specifically she was afraid of, but Valerie didn't give a clear answer. Her mother did her best to soothe her fears, and they said their goodbyes. Around midnight, Valerie sent a text to her mom, saying she felt much better and was heading to bed. Exhausted. That was the last anyone ever heard from Valerie. The following day, January 29th, Valerie was a no-show at work. This was completely out of character for her. Valerie was a responsible employee, never late, always conscientious. Plus, she hadn't called in or warned anyone of her absence. She'd been at the bookstore for about 2 years and genuinely loved her job. she wouldn't just abandon it. Her manager couldn't reach her by phone. That evening, Valerie was expected at a family dinner, but she never arrived. Her mother, recalling their disturbing conversation the previous day, was sick with worry. Valerie wasn't answering her phone. Family members called and texted relentlessly, but every call went straight to voicemail. A sense of dread enveloped Valerie's family. They plastered her pictures across social media and reached out to all her friends, desperately searching for any clue to her whereabouts. But no one had seen or heard from her. On the morning of January 30th, her frantic relatives went to the police station to report Valerie missing. They immediately voiced their suspicions about her ex-boyfriend, Javier, urging the police to investigate him thoroughly. The police conducted a search of Valerie's apartment, looking for any leads, but initially found nothing overtly suspicious. There were no obvious signs of a struggle or forced entry, though small bloodstains were noted on a pillowcase and in the bathroom. At the time, these stains didn't raise major alarms with the officers. They perhaps chalked it up to something innocuous, like a minor cut or a nosebleed, and didn't give it significant attention. As the search for Valerie officially began, police requested her cell phone records. The records revealed something chilling. Valerie's phone had been switched to airplane mode around 3 a.m. on the night of January 28th to 29th and hadn't been active since. Even more disturbingly, someone had accessed her iCloud account and was rifling through her photos, videos, and messages, a complete violation of her digital life. This was deeply suspicious and incredibly unsettling. Then, another piece of the puzzle. 2 hours later, at 5 a.m. on January 29th, someone used Valerie's debit card to withdraw $1,000 from her account. ATM surveillance footage captured a man making the withdrawal. He arrived in a black Honda, took out the cash, and quickly drove off. Valerie was nowhere in sight. Cross-referencing footage from other surveillance cameras, investigators managed to get the car's license plate number. A check revealed the black Honda was a rental, leased by none other than Valerie's ex-boyfriend, Javier, the very person her family had urged police to scrutinize. With this, Javier shot to the top of the suspect list, and the police intensified their focus on him. Detectives secured a search warrant for Javier's home. While the search itself didn't immediately yield damning evidence, they did discover surveillance cameras near his residence. Footage from these cameras showed Javier leaving his home in the black Honda at 10:50 p.m. on January 28th. Further investigation revealed that his cell phone had pinged near Valerie's house around that time. A check of Valerie's phone records confirmed she hadn't called or texted him in a long time. There was no invitation for him to come over. So what was he doing there? Why would he show up uninvited outside her apartment near midnight? Crucially, Javier then switched his phone to airplane mode, making it untraceable for a period. When his phone came back online at 6:30 a.m., it pinged near Harrison, Connecticut. An hour later, at 7:30 a.m., it was traced to Greenwich, Connecticut. It wasn't until 9:43 a.m. that he returned to his apartment in Quincy, New York, a return also captured by those security cameras. Upon his return, Javier was wearing different clothes than when he'd left and was carrying a large sports bag. A few minutes later, he left his apartment again, this time without the bag, adding another layer of unease. It turned out that on the evening before Valerie's disappearance, Javier had posted an old photo of them together on Instagram. Meanwhile, as police pieced together their case, Valerie's desperate relatives were plastering flyers and organizing search parties. But their efforts yielded nothing. Then, on February 5th, a week after she vanished, came the devastating breakthrough I mentioned at the start. Road workers stumbled upon that red suitcase on the side of a road. Upon opening it, they immediately alerted the police. Inside was the body of a young woman, her hands and feet bound, her mouth sealed with tape. Her shirt was unbuttoned. She was wearing jeans but no shoes. A severe injury was visible on her head. On February 6th, the body was tragically identified as that of the missing 24-year-old Valerie Eise. Her family had to endure the horror of identifying her. The pathologist's report confirmed it was a homicide. Valerie had been struck on the head with a blunt object and then, horrifyingly, locked inside the suitcase while still alive. She died there from asphyxiation, a truly agonizing end. Police were convinced Javier was their man, but hard evidence was still somewhat circumstantial, centering largely on his possession of Valerie's bank card. He was subsequently arrested and charged in connection with the card. Valerie's bank card and her ID card were indeed found in his wallet. During questioning, Javier spun a tale, claiming he'd accidentally found her card and ID at a bar. It was a story that strained credulity. Detectives confronted him, stating they knew he'd been outside Valerie's house the night she disappeared. His story then shifted. "Yes, I drank a lot that day. I might have been there. I don't remember anything," he claimed. When investigators laid out the grim reality of what had happened to Valerie, he reportedly broke down. Javier then confessed, and his version of events began to spill out. According to Javier, on the evening of January 28th, he went to Valerie's place at her invitation, and they engaged in rough but consensual sex. During this encounter, he alleged she accidentally fell, struck her head on the floor, sustained that severe head injury, and lost consciousness. He claimed he panicked, unsure what to do. Javier asserted he tried to help her, performing CPR and chest compressions, but to no avail. He didn't call the police, he said, because he was afraid he'd be blamed for everything. So, he concocted a plan. His plan was to tie her up, tape her mouth, place her in a suitcase, and dispose of her body. This, of course, raised a massive red flag. Why tie her up and tape her mouth if, as he claimed, she was already unresponsive and showing no signs of life? He even bizarrely claimed he withdrew money from her card knowing police would be looking for him, supposedly to facilitate their search. And then he went on to charge an additional $4,350 to her card. He admitted to tossing Valerie's phone off a bridge into the river and meticulously cleaning the rental car, which is why no evidence was found in it. He also confessed to logging into her iCloud and snooping through her photos and other stored documents. Chillingly, he used her thumbprint to access her bank account balance. The police, understandably, didn't buy his story. He was charged with kidnapping resulting in Valerie's death. It further emerged that Javier hadn't just drained her bank account. He'd also stolen her laptop and computer, and had even taken a photo of these stolen items. When his roommate questioned him about the new electronics, Javier absurdly claimed he'd just found them on the street. It sounded utterly bizarre, and while the roommate didn't believe him, he didn't press the issue. Forensic evidence was damning. Javier's DNA was found on the red suitcase and on Valerie's body, under her fingernails, and on her chest and genital area. At trial, the prosecution painted a picture of Javier as a man obsessed with Valerie. The prosecutor presented their version of events. Javier went to Valerie's apartment. With no signs of forced entry, it's likely he still had a key, or she let him in under some pretext, or he forced his way in when she opened the door. The prosecution theorized Valerie might have been asleep or was surprised by his entry. Once inside, he attacked her, likely with the intent to sexually assault her. A struggle ensued. He struck her on the head with a blunt object, causing her to lose consciousness. Panicked, Javier then bound her and taped her mouth to prevent her from screaming or escaping. He then placed her, still alive, into the suitcase, carried her out, put her in the car, and drove to dispose of the suitcase far from her home. On February 5, 2020, at his trial, Javier de Silva pleaded guilty to kidnapping resulting in death. He expressed remorse and apologized to Valerie's grieving family. His defense attorney argued that Javier was suffering from severe depression following the breakup. Being far from home and allegedly using substances had, they claimed, exacerbated his mental state. Letters from acquaintances in Venezuela were read, portraying Javier as a good man who had simply snapped and made a terrible mistake. Valerie's family, understandably, found his words hollow and rejected his apology. Valerie's mother rightfully called him a selfish, greedy, and soulless individual. On September 3, 2021, Javier de Silva was sentenced to 30 years in prison. It also came to light that Javier was in the U.S. illegally. He had entered on May 8, 2017, under the Visa Waiver Program and was supposed to have departed by August 5, 2017. He overstayed, meaning upon his eventual release from prison, he faces deportation back to Venezuela. If you found this story compelling or just want to support the channel, please hit that like button and subscribe. I'd really like to hear your thoughts on this case, so let's meet down in the comment section to discuss it. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.